Let me call this meeting back to order. Okay, well, no more testimony. Give you the floor for discussion. That's one item.
This is for discussion right now.
Yes.
Okay. 960 is not about GMO food and its safety. It never was. I eat GMO food every day. It's hard to avoid. Most of you do as well. This bill is about health and safety of our citizens. It's about research practices that are occurring on Kauai that have led to very high quantities of pesticides, restricted use pesticides, being applied very frequently. The bill was very modest. It asked for disclosure, buffer zones. Am I about to be interrupted?
No, I just want to make sure. Are we in discussion here, or are we?
That's why I was asking.
I see we're in discussion, so.
Okay. So our rules allow me to speak twice for 5 minutes, and I'm speaking for the first time right now. So this is about what's happening on Kauai. It's not about GMO food safety or whether it's about research practices that have led to very high frequencies of restricted use pesticides being sprayed 4 to 6 times a week. It's a unique circumstance to Kauai. Okay? But our pediatricians, this is what turned it for me. Our pediatricians say there is a clear and present danger now, today. Where did they say that? They said it in this release of a study, of a paper called Pesticide Exposure in Children that reviewed 195 studies about facts. And so I'm going to read first some of that. Pesticides are a collective term for a wide array of chemicals intended to kill unwanted pests, plants, molds, rodents, food and water, treatment in yards, homes, schools, are all potential sources for exposure. Exposure to pesticides may be overt or subacute, and effects range from acute to chronic toxicity. In 2008, pesticides were the ninth most common substance reported to Poison Control Centers, and approximately 45% of all reports of pesticide poisoning were for children. Organophosphates and poisoning are perhaps the most widely known acute poisoning syndrome. This is about children and children's unique vulnerabilities. The study says under the section, Children's Exposure and Vulnerabilities, Mechanisms and Sources of Exposure. Children are uniquely vulnerable to uptake and adverse effects of pesticides because of developmentary, dietary, and physiological factors. Exposures occur through ingestion, inhalation, dermal contact. Unintentional ingestion by children may be considerably higher than those of adults because of the greater intake of food or fluids per pounds of body weight. Children exhibit frequent hand-to-mouth activity, and this is an important source of increased exposure. So they go on to tell us about where these exposures happen. Residential exposures, very useful. Read it. There are chemicals I will never use again because I read this, and I know which ones I can't use in my home safely. It goes on to talk about my notes. Residential factors, exposures in drinking water. On Kauai, our water department assured us that atrazine was no longer in the water, only to have the USDA find it in the drinking fountain at Waimea Canyon School. So we've got problems. It's in the food supply. They tell us in this article. Look at the food supply. They tell us that children who do organic diets for just 5 days have less metabolites of pesticides coming out of their urine. Okay, that's very important because I'm going to read about the agricultural related exposure. This is from our pediatricians. Proximity to pesticide-treated agricultural areas or household members that work with pesticides presents another opportunity for contamination of the residential environment for some children. In a Washington State study of children of agricultural workers and non-agricultural workers in an agricultural setting, pesticide levels in carpet dust and pesticide metabolites in urine of residents increased with self-reported proximity of homes to orchard fields and during pesticide application setting. Similarly, in agriculture setting in California, pesticide residues of 3 chemicals used and recently on crops were significantly correlated with house dust samples in nearby homes and urine samples among inhabitants. The findings were noted in both farm workers and non-farm workers. The presence of an agricultural worker in the home also increased the pesticide levels from take-home exposures. Children living in farm had higher urinary pesticide metabolite levels than children not living on a farm. I asked the state why they weren't testing these metabolite levels. Why weren't they testing dust? They don't have the money, they can't do it. That's what's happening on Kauai right now. Spraying in it. So the summary of this thing says, pesticides are a complex group of chemicals with a wide range of acute and chronic toxicity. Poison control centers report lower rates of more severe poisonings, but continue to report similar total numbers of acute exposures among children. There's a growing body of literature that suggests pesticides may induce chronic health complications in children, including neurodevelopmental, behavioral problems, birth defects, asthma, and cancer. They say, what should we do about it? Spraying in the community, great to know. How long? Okay. I'll reserve my next 5 minutes to complete this. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Yeah. Councilmember, anything else?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to be voting to receive the bill. I think we all are concerned about health, and Bill 2491, Ordinance 960 was an attempt to address the issue. From the very start,